You might be witnessing the birth of a new revolutionary method for making garden furniture with your own hands, and maybe not just garden furniture. Some people might even think that this sofa is made from quality boards, but there isn't a single piece of wood in it, and that's because a modern next-generation composite material was used. All the components for this creativity are easy to find and available at any hardware store. Wooden garden furniture quickly loses its attractive appearance, requires constant protection from the elements with expensive treatments, and needs to be kept under dry canopies. Our sofa avoids these drawbacks and should last over 50 years outdoors in its original condition. Chinese plastic garden furniture, more weather resistant than wood, now costs nearly as much as mahogany furniture did recently. It seems our Chinese comrades may no longer be comrades, or perhaps it's just our own businessmen importing furniture from them who aren't true friends. Maybe both sides just want to profit from us gardeners and summer residents who are trying to make our small plots comfortable. I think we'll never really find the reason for such a price jump. So I decided to do my small part and try to make everything cheaper. As usual, viewers of the Yasha Koshak Songs channel are the first to learn this important information. Let's review everything step by step. Hello everyone! First of all, I roughen up the smooth sheets of Penoplex Comfort using a saw blade detached from the handle. I use boards that are only 3 centimeters thick and they have a rabbet, or as it's also called, an L-edge. I cut off one long side and one short side. I use thin strips of polyurethane adhesive foam to attach plaster fiberglass mesh, avoiding state standard Gosudarstvenny standards. As for the height and depth of the seat, the height of the armrests, and so on, you can use the dimensions of a finished industrial sample. That's exactly what I'm doing. Next, I'm using a well-tested method for bending foam board that I perfected during the 2023 construction season. For this, besides the mesh, I use a wooden block, 2 clamps, and a homemade welding table. I called the table Ramstein after the legendary German industrial metal band. No politics involved. I'll tell you a bit later how you can bend foam board without the Ramstein table. For guaranteed results, it's best to keep the sheet fixed in a curved position for at least a couple of hours. I'm moving on to the second sheet, doing the same thing but kind of as a mirror image, because the first sheet will be the left part of the sofa and this one will be the right. Time passes quickly while keeping the curved foam board under the Ramstein table's lower crossbar. And here's what we have. The foam board is quite strong in compression, but rather brittle in bending. The strong fiberglass mesh prevents a destructive crack from forming on the outside. The bend happens due to crumpling and deformation of the inner side, meaning the side toward which the bend is happening. The seat height of our old outdoor chair is 41 centimeters. I mark the height here and draw a line. Next, I use leftover mesh scraps from previous projects. Just use a small amount of polyurethane adhesive foam to secure them. Then I make cuts up to the approximate seat height line. On the outside, I also peel off the mesh roughly up to this line. I try to do the next bends using just my hands. Basically, everything works out, but it's less labor intensive to use the block with the clamp and the table again. No need to bend it to 90 degrees here anymore. Digging through my stash, I find scraps of Penoplex, 2 about half the size of a standard sheet and 2 even smaller. I bend them exactly the same way as the first 2 pieces. I bent the first one, then the second, and here are 2 more. While the 4 small pieces are taking shape under the table's crossbar, I'm working on the second large mirrored piece. I decided to bend the 4 small pieces more, and to make their shapes identical, I glue these identical things inside. While the glue sets, I'm finishing bending the second large piece. Almost all the curved elements of the future garden sofa are ready. The left armrest has already taken its place, but the armrest of the factory-made chair suggests that my version seems to be a bit too high. Better too much than too little. I cut off the excess with a utility knife and glue it again. Looks about right now. To hold it in place while the foam adhesive sets, I use temporary screws. I do the same thing to adjust and glue the right armrest. I glue together the 2 pieces that will become the backrest. Now comes the moment of truth. I carefully apply glue to the ends of the 2 large pieces, right and left, and voila! They're already glued together. Even the backrest is almost done. Just a little more work left. The leftover mesh pieces serve their protective purpose while shaping the intended form. I peel them off, but I don't throw them away. I plan to make a couple more chairs using the same method. As promised to regular viewers, I'll remind you about Yasha Koshiak's songs and introduce them to new viewers. How can you bend Penoplex without a homemade Ramstein welding table? For example, when I was bending Penoplex in the summer to make a warm composter for mowed grass, I used the wooden fence of our covered area, and then I used the edge of the wooden flooring of the covered area. So it seemed to me that bending this way was more convenient. By bending the Penoplex in the composter, I created rounded corners, which I think improved its appearance. And not only that, when making the mini pool plunge bath, I bent the Penoplex comfort by hand, just using a temporarily glued mesh, no tools needed. For this idea, I needed sheets evenly curved along their length with a large arc radius. Thanks to the properties of Penoplex as a very effective insulator, I was able to make a plunge bath mini pool with unique features. In sunny weather, the water heats up quickly and barely cools during cool nights. And thanks to the property of Penoplex as a material with very low water absorption, I managed without expensive and labor-intensive waterproofing. My very first experience with bending extruded polystyrene foam was with an unglued mesh, fixing it with extruded polystyrene wooden bars and clamps. Support the innovative, low-cost projects on the Yasha Koshiak channel by clicking the sponsorship button on YouTube. I also had experience bending Penoplex with reinforced mesh and adhesive for thermal insulation. While the adhesive was still fresh, I used a template matrix. After the mixture set, I got strong rings. Using this method, I made rings for a deep biological treatment septic tank with unique properties. To be brief, I'm linking the video about these do-it-yourself projects below. I glued the seat with a slight tilt toward the backrest along the armrest line, cut off, and I'm cutting off the excess. I also used a leftover piece from previous projects. The methods I use are almost waste-free. Not only do I try to film the entire manufacturing process in as much detail as possible, but I also do my best to explain in words the method of making an innovative next-generation garden sofa. But everything is so simple and different compared to classic furniture-making methods that it feels more like a creative process. The main thing here is not to be afraid to improvise, and something will definitely work out. You don't have to bend the foam board. You could design a sofa with more angles. I just learned how to bend extruded polystyrene and liked it. For now, the future sofa is even lighter than inflatable furniture, but that's just for now. Soon it should become strong enough and heavier. It's really cool that you can twist the sofa like this. Don't judge the shapes too harshly. I'm still just getting the hang of this material when it comes to furniture. I'm mixing the insulation compound. These kinds of mixes are sold in all hardware stores and they come in different brands. They're used for attaching mineral wool and polystyrene foam boards to the facades of houses that need insulation. And with these mixes and alkali-resistant plaster mesh, you can also create a base reinforcing layer on the surface of the insulation. Using basic plastering tools, a spatula and a float, I started creating the base reinforcing layer on the surface of the future sofa. The insulation mix contains special polymers that ensure reliable adhesion to the foam board. I overlap the pieces and mesh with a minimum overlap of 10 centimeters. Sometimes I use small scraps, fiberglass mesh, and leftovers from other jobs, while in other areas I cut larger pieces from a new roll. This is the same technology that has been used for decades to reinforce warm facades made of foam board, except my surface is more curved. The excellent properties of foam board as a powerful insulator won't be used in this project, but its durability, over 50 years of service life, its almost non-existent water absorption, and its reliable adhesion will be. I'm using the mixture in fiberglass mesh up to 100. The final finishing doesn't require perfectly smooth surfaces, so even someone picking up plastering tools for the first time can handle this simple job. With a wide spatula, I make the surface relatively even. The layer is thin, so it dries and sets quite quickly. Along with polymers, the mixture has cement, which takes time to fully harden, allowing you to fix mistakes easily. In the first few days, you can easily perfect the surface. The garden sofa is still light, but not as much as before. The hardened outer layer reinforced the curved backs and armrests, so I removed the foam pieces inside. First, they've already served their purpose, and second, without them, it will be much easier to continue applying the reinforcing layer. And the look of the whole sofa without them should become a more interesting and lighter design. However, the back wall was slightly curved, so I added a temporary bar to level it. I already know in advance that the sofa will be strong enough for a sofa, based on my experience working with reinforced extruded polystyrene. According to the technique, you need to use a float or a spatula to apply a layer of mixture a few millimeters thick onto the foam, lay the fiberglass mesh, and use the float to press it into the mixture. You shouldn't lay the mesh first, and then apply the mixture on top. That's why I didn't leave the glued mesh pieces. Instead, I lay them on the mixture again and apply the reinforcing layer. This process is incorrect. It's wrong to call it plastering. In this case, the birth of an innovative sofa made from real composite material is taking place. Let me remind you, a composite material is a compound material that has new properties compared to the individual materials it is made from. For example, carbon fiber, add polymer resin and you get a very strong carbon composite. Composites are made by combining materials into one structure, resulting in properties very different from the original components. When making items from such material, you hardly need any tools. To be honest, as a do-it-yourself blogger, I often get messages from various brands offering to advertise this or that tool. Because all my do-it-yourself projects are very simple and hardly require any tools, I have to turn them down. But on the bright side, I rarely get new tools, so I'm not distracted from coming up with tool-free techniques. It's winter in the garage, humidity is high, and the heater speeds up the process. Once it sets, most flaws are easy to fix. A major benefit of this method is that the mineral surface can now be coated with many different finishes, both store-bought for any budget and homemade for the smallest budget. For example, I made the gate 90% out of Penoplex and added a store-bought coating, but the finish was neither cheap nor attractive. Store-bought, so soulless. The house for $1,000 the project uses Penoplex walls, as do our outdoor toilet and summer shower. Decorated to look like brickwork using the cheapest tile adhesive, it turned out quite nice and very inexpensive. Super productive, tall, very warm garden bed made of Penoplex, composters made of Penoplex, a plunge pool made of Penoplex, a path made of Penoplex, and a fence made of Penoplex. Decorated to resemble natural stone using the cheapest tile adhesive, the stone improved with every project. It's also quite beautiful and very cheap to decorate it to look like expensive stone, and a sofa is already too much. After all, we don't live in Rubliovka, but in an ordinary Belarusian village. We have no one to show off to. Belarusians are modest people. That's why I decided to master another method of cheap decorative finishing, and the first thing I did was modify a rubber spatula to the right condition. I mix a little of the cheapest tile adhesive and make the first applications. After watching a couple of tutorials on YouTube, now I'm trying to repeat what I saw. I hope you see I'm trying to make the sofa look like wood. The knots didn't work out for me right away, so I decided not to paint them at all and decorate it as A-grade wood. In first-grade wood, the absence of knots is preferred. The neighbors will be shocked to see where I found such quality boards for sale. It's tough to get them around here. I quickly noticed you need less tile adhesive than when using brick or natural stone. I use a trowel to apply the thinnest layer of adhesive I can, then I run a rubber spatula over it, turning it from side to side. Friends, don't judge me too harshly, this is my first time. Everything is done without any redos or retakes. I think it's acceptable. I reinforced all the edges with mesh and adhesive. I worked for 10 years as an engineer at a small furniture factory, putting in full shifts as they say. When I first started engineering, I didn't know anything about furniture at all. I'm trained as an electronics specialist. The layer is very thin, so it dries quickly. I use spatulas to fix flaws on the pseudo-wooden surface. The staffing schedule requires an engineer at the furniture factory. I had to become one, gradually figured things out, and there was plenty of time in the furniture business. Over the years, I became an experienced professional. A classic sofa frame consists of many parts. It's not simple at all. But when making it this way, you can forget all your furniture experience, because everything is super simple. Now the sofa weighs almost like a wooden garden bench. One of the viewers of the channel wrote a comment, and I quote, "Engineers, technologists, chemists who develop new materials and technologies turn out to be complete fools who don't know that reinforced foam board can replace materials when creating anything." End of quote. As I understand it, the tone should be sarcastic. Who knows, maybe. On the contrary, isn't it the business's job not to let such materials get a chance? Otherwise, for example, construction could become much cheaper, as well as everything else where this material could be used, and that's really not profitable for business. Basically, so far everything is very simple. Who really didn't like my wood style finish option? This video isn't about finishing, it's about a sofa that's 90% made of Penoplex. And there are countless finishing options for this kind of furniture. You could even go as far as covering it with real mosaics if you really put your mind to it. Even people from Rubliovka would be envious then. Parallel imports probably don't apply to Italian garden furniture, and it's hard to do without products from Italian craftsmen. They're probably feeling very sad now. My wife and I used the cheapest facade paint and a few colorants to mix what we thought was the closest color to wood. But we didn't mix enough paint. It was only enough for half the sofa, so we had to mix the paint again. This time I had to do it alone, and I didn't get the color right at all. I needed this color, but I mixed up this one instead. This time I made too much paint, and it was a shame to mix it all over again. I chose a milk chocolate wood color for the sofa. Recently, the All-Russian Best Do-It-Yourself Blogger 2023 award took place, which has been organized for the 5th time by VSA Instrumenti. Russia Yasha Koshak's song channel was once again among the nominees. I know many viewers voted very actively, thank you very much, but we didn't win this time. We ended up somewhere in the middle, and the contenders were very strong. And maybe it didn't help that many people see the channel's approach, where the key is not the tool, but simple and very accessible technologies. I admit, that's what I'm aiming for. I understand that all the Russia tools couldn't make a nomination for work without a tool. Protocol and asphalt. You can surround yourself with lots of expensive machines and tools for every task, but still not create anything new or truly interesting. I'd get bored with that, and I think you would too. That's why machines and tools are good, but tool-free and machine-free methods are even better. As you can see, it's very simple. Foam board, glue, mesh, a float, and even unskilled hands can do it. Take a look at my technology. However, at the final stage, I cover the sofa with a slightly tinted acrylic antiseptic varnish for wood, brick, plaster, and stone. My wife also took part in the process and sewed a soft cushion for the seat. Here's the result. Don't judge too harshly, it's my first time. I'll mention the cost. For the sofa, which is about 1.6 meters wide with armrests, 1.2 meters across the seats, and 80 centimeters deep, it took just 5 sheets. Penoplex Comfort, 3 centimeters thick, used less than one 25 kilogram bag. Adhesive for thermal insulation, about 7 square meters, about a kilogram of plaster fiberglass mesh, 4 bags of tile adhesive, a third of a can of foam adhesive, just a little paint and varnish, a few pieces of foam, and about a square meter and a half of fabric. I think it's clear that for a sofa that looks like it's made of wood, the cost price is next to nothing. The material feels no harder than wood and is somewhat warm, unlike reinforced concrete. If there were a museum of foam board, I think this sofa would fit right in there. Give it a big thumbs up. Subscribe to Yasha Koshak's song channel, follow me on Zen, TikTok, and Instagram. All the links are below the video. Also hit the bell, and then I'll definitely keep you informed. Yes, let there be peace worldwide. Thank you.